Okay, everybody, welcome back. This is episode 344 of the John1911 Podcast. Today is Monday, July 15th at 9:23 a.m. I have to timestamp this because obviously things are developing quickly and something I say could either be expanded upon or discredited, with more information coming out about the Trump shooting. This will be a solo episode, and I've decided to do these this way because I think this is an opportunity not only to discuss, how to handle crises and how to look at things, but also to maybe educate some of the listeners for pitfalls to watch out for, especially today on the internet. So let's just jump right into it. First problem that we see with this kind of stuff is in the absence of actual information and or understanding of how things work. It is a human tendency, and not unfounded, to try to extrapolate or maybe even project, solutions or answers into something that aren't really any based in reality. And a lot of this behavior ends up creating conspiracy theories. And so I've said this before to the regulars, anyone, and this is something that I guess I need to go back in time a little bit. I'm 52 years old, and this is a lesson that I learned personally in my life 30 years ago, 30 years ago. And what it was for me, I grew up like all of you. And again, this is the story I'm about to tell you is pre-internet, but it's not only does it apply today, it's actually even applies even more just by how quickly everything develops. I remember either being directly involved in high profile or, well-covered events by media, either directly involved or tangentially connected. And within a day or two, the media would be covering it. And I would obviously, I was diligent. I read the newspaper, every day, especially, during the week. And more often than not, actually, no, every single time that I read a story in the newspaper that I had direct knowledge of the issue or events being covered, I noticed that about 40% of what was written in that newspaper was wrong. And I don't mean just a little wrong. I'm not talking about being pedantic. I'm talking about major batshit crazy, backwards ass, retarded fucking wrong. And this happened enough. It didn't happen initially, but it happened enough that I started to ask myself, oh my God, I'm reading this newspaper, and everything that I know about when I read the article, about 40% of it is incorrect. Well, what about the rest of the newspaper that I read every day that I'm not involved in? Is 40% of everything else I read not correct? And so, it was a real learning lesson, a little bit about the media and also about human behavior and human nature. People want to act like they have the answers. And now in today's internet media, where people feel like they need to have credit to go first, people will repeat things or see things. Or here's the biggest phenomenon. It used to be, again, back when I was reading the physical newspaper, if we saw it in the newspaper, it must be true. Or if it isn't true, we don't know it's true. It came with a lot of authority. And what a lot of folks do today, they read something on the internet and they go, even if they don't admit it, it has a lot of authority to their minds. So they start repeating it or parroting it without actually trying to understand, the source. And so with John1911, we decided a long time ago, well over a decade ago, that we've been in business, is we would never try to be first, but we would always try to be right. So if that means that if something is developing or we have to tell the story of something or we're going to share information, We are going to wait until we can confirm things. Now, I wish I could tell you that I'm oh so great and perfect, that I started off with, we're only going to triple confirm everything we publish. Well, and, unfortunately, maybe fortunately, with experience, I had gotten burned enough, even knowing what I knew back with the real newspaper. I wanted to be first with things on the internet because I wanted the traffic and I wanted the credit. And I started to learn that if I started parroting things or just be like, this is the answer, someone's got the answer, this makes sense, just share it, that it just made me look like an asshole. And it made John 1911 look like an asshole because it made us look like everybody else. So when things happen like this, that obviously with there's just no two ways about it. The attempted assassination of Donald Trump is not going to be one of these events that, it's the topic of the day or the topic of the moment. And I don't think a lot of people today are thinking that this is just going to go out on the news cycle, but I'm still willing to bet that a lot of folks who are on the internet trying to win today and maybe succumbing to conspiracy theories don't fully appreciate how significant the events of the past 48 hours are in American history, in many ways world history. Let me make this clear. In the history of the United States, the photograph of what happened to Donald Trump at that rally will be in history books 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now. It will be in history books until there's no more history. If people wanted in the future wanted a summary of America, they're going to show George Washington and maybe the Revolution, and maybe they'll talk about, maybe like certain wars or certain things that happened or in cultural touchstones. The former president of the United States running to be reelected as president in a non-consecutive term, being shot in the head, holding his fist up, saying, fight, 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 with blood running down the side of his face. That will be forever associated with the history of this country. It is next level interesting, telling. It'll be as well known and understood as maybe talking about Caesar. When you mention Rome, you think about Caesar. When you talk about Egypt, maybe you talk about King Tut or Cleopatra. Today people, if they associate the Spartans, they think of Leonidas. This is going to be that big. Christopher Columbus discovering the New World. Magellan circumnavigating the globe. It was Magellan, right? Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. Donald Trump. We are living in unbelievable times. And people are turned up to 11 and they get on the internet and they start saying crazy shit, or they're repeating crazy shit. And I can't blame them too much, because I'm not a person that's prone to believe a lot of conspiracy theories. However, I'm always reevaluating everything. And if I'm wrong, if I say something on this podcast that is incorrect, I have to correct the record. If I take a position that turns out to be incorrect, I have to correct the record. Not only with you publicly, but I do it internally. I learn lessons from it. And like and as out of control as the government has been the past, say, I guess realistically you can say 8 years, 9 years, for sure. It's so many conspiracy theories have turned out to be true that it's easy to just think everything is a conspiracy theory. And if you go through your life thinking like that, what ends up happening is you don't use logic. Like there was always a stereotype in the Middle East. You have these uneducated people that really didn't understand how the world worked. And every time something happened that they didn't understand, they would just say, it's the CIA. And that's kind of what we're seeing today. So let's talk about what we know so far about the shooting with Donald Trump. And then I'm going to give you some information that I know because I've spent a lot of time in the firearms business, the firearms training business, precision rifle game, around SWAT snipers, government snipers, and federal agents. Okay. The first thing you need to remember in all of these situations is first reports are almost always wrong. And those first reports that end up being wrong typically will contribute to conspiracy theories later. An example that you will see with this case with Trump would be, and people have memory hold this already, it's only been 48 hours, there was an image circulating on the internet of a black person who it was reported was the shooter of Donald Trump. And then that disappeared. Now, I don't know where that came from. I don't know what the logic was for that, but that image was the first image that was fed to the public. Maybe some troll fed it. Maybe someone made an innocent mistake, or the conspiracy theorist will come out with in the future. I promise you that black guy who initially was the shooter, who has now disappeared from everybody's news feeds because they don't want to acknowledge mistakes, will turn into the second shooter. See, you know what I'm doing here, a reference to another shooting. So, first reports are almost always wrong. The second thing is that a lot of people don't understand is the United States Secret Service, and in particular, executive protection of the President of the United States. Most people, they have a basic, most of what they think they know about the Secret Service and how they interface with the President is either formulated by Hollywood, which isn't real, or formulated only by what they can see on a TV screen that most people watch on their phone within maybe 15 feet of a president. The first thing you need to understand is not all Secret Service members are equal. Not all Secret Service details are equal, and not all Secret Service protection jobs are equal. This is going to come as a shock, which is going to explain quite a bit of this for the home gamer. The sitting president of the United States, who happens to be Joe Biden right now, but the sitting president of the United States, his Secret Service protection is so large and so logistically heavy that the average person listening to this can't even comprehend how big it is. I'm talking more than $1 billion worth of equipment, hundreds of agents, local law enforcement, military personnel, National Command Authority, intelligence agencies, and on and on and on. It is effing huge. Donald Trump, as a former president, has Secret Service protection, but he does not have current president level Secret Service protection. His Secret Service protection is no joke, not even a 10th. It's probably a 20th of the size of what the current president gets. And this is out of necessity because he's a former president. And so the first problem people have is they just say, Secret Service, how could this happen? And they're like, and people, they're like, this is a conspiracy, or this is intentional, or this is an inside job. This should never happen. And it's like, well, airplanes should never crash either. But an airplane crashing isn't necessarily a conspiracy theory, or is it necessarily malice? Could be human error, or it could just be luck of the draw. Okay, so let's talk about the president's Secret Service level protection. I'm not going to go into deep detail because I'm not an expert on it, but I've had some connections. I've had some contact with it a little bit, and I'm not unfamiliar with the basic ideas. So, and this is what Joe Biden has right now, not what former President Donald Trump has, not what former President Obama has, not what former President Bush has. Is Jimmy Carter, is he still alive? I honestly don't remember, or what he has. I will go on the record and tell you this, that the detail that protects Jimmy Carter is so low-key small that it's a pretty good detail. And I believe Jimmy Carter at one point even wanted to get rid of Secret Service protection. It might have been during Obama's presidency. And I think Obama, I mean, they didn't say this publicly, but basically told him, F you, bro. I'm not going to be the president that has a former president killed on my watch. So you can refuse it all you want, but you're going to at least have something. And, you know, anyone that's ever saw Jimmy Carter on a on a commercial airline with a couple Secret Service people with him, you know, that is not the same Secret Service protection that even that's not, I mean, the First Lady gets way more than that. Okay. But let's just talk about the president's Secret Service protection for a minute, just so you can understand how large this is. And this is not what Trump gets. This is not what Obama gets. We can have a debate whether they should get this. I doubt we could justify it, but let's talk about it. So most of the Secret Service that you guys see on television is just a fraction of what the detail is to protect the president 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. Okay? The Secret Service for the president, they do a lot of advanced work. I've had contact with advanced work people. They come in weeks ahead of time if they know where people are going to be. They lay out routes, alternative routes. They keep stuff hidden. You know, one of the things the Secret Service has always been hugely worried about in the past were IEDs and vehicle-borne IEDs. Now, you listening to this, you're like, well, yeah, no shit. You know, all the Iraq War and Afghanistan and all that. No. The Secret Service really had a come-to-Jesus moment about this. This happened in Beirut, Lebanon was it in the 90s? I think it was. Late 80s, early 90s. And there was a prime minister. His name was, if I recall, I think it was Hariri. I didn't study for this. It's just a story I just remembered. And he was, you know, a Lebanese. I think he was a billionaire. He was a very wealthy man, but a successful politician, kind of a nationalist, you know, not unlike Trump in many ways. And the Syrians were always a group that put a lot of influence in Lebanon. And he, as a nationalist in Lebanon, was more concerned about the Lebanese, not the Syrians. And, you know, people were using Syria as a staging ground for whatever their particular activities were. You know, whether it's the Syrians in there to fuck with the Israelis, whether it's the PLO in there to fuck with the Israelis, you know, the Iranians in there to fuck with the Americans and the Israelis. And we can go on and on and on and on. Okay. And these Syrians didn't like this guy because they felt that he was going to be a problem for them and their activities in that country that they would use for their, you know, I'm not saying Syria was unjustified. I mean, they had their reasons. I mean, it's not about a moral argument. It's the Syrians would like to stay there and the Lebanese maybe didn't want them to stay there. They like to have their country back. And what the Syrians did is they blew up the prime minister's car, his limousine or whatever vehicle he was in. I think he was in a couple vehicles. And I'm like, when I tell you that they blew up the car, again, this is years before the Iraq War, okay? And what we saw happen. They didn't just blow up his car. They didn't just blow up the car in front of him. They didn't just blow up the car behind him. The Syrians put explosives, I think, in the sewers that were so large, or maybe they put it in vehicles. The explosion was so large, it blew up the entire street. And when I say the entire street, I mean the entire street. And I don't mean like an alley. I'm talking a thoroughfare. It was unbelievable. And the Secret Service, they're always looking, and they, you know, we run a reference collection here at John1911 for various weapons. Well, the Secret Service, they run a reference collection on various ways that people try to kill people. And they noticed that, and they became very worried about it. And you're like, why am I telling you this? The Secret Service, for the president, they show up places, they're checking sewers, they're sealing sewer lids, they're marking them to see if anybody's been in them. They have all these different routes. There's all kinds of stuff going on. There's Air Force One, okay? There's the backup Air Force One that always flies, that's at an airport within like maybe an hour away, that in case Air Force One gets incapacitated or damaged in an attack, that they can evacuate to a second Air Force One or bring that Air Force One into a different location, alternative airports. And this is 2 Air Force Ones just for the sitting president. But that's not the only plane. There's a third plane, and I'm not saying anything that's really out of school. If you want to research this, you can. There's a third plane. It's usually about the size of a small business jet. And this airplane has the full suite of communications in it. I believe it's hardened against nuclear electromagnetic pulse, and the president is fully capable from this small aircraft and maybe a handful of people in this aircraft of still being president and fighting a war and communicating with everybody around the world. The only time this aircraft, to my knowledge, has ever actually been ever talked about publicly. Also, it's used because it can get into smaller airports in an emergency. Like, let's say the Russian paratroopers attack and take out the airport or the airports where Air Force One is, but they can get this thing in a small little dirt runway. The only time this airplane has ever been, that I recall, ever mentioned publicly, they didn't say exactly what the airplane was. There was a time when, I think it was Bill Clinton, flew on a surprise trip. I believe it was to Pakistan. Obviously, this was before 9/11, and maybe it had something to do with Pakistan and India torching off nuclear weapons. I can't remember what the trip was, but it was a super secret trip, and no one acknowledged it until he was either on his way out or had actually already arrived back. And they're like, "How did you get in there? How did you do this?" Because Air Force Ones, they knew where they were, they decoyed it and they flew him in this small airplane. So think about what I've listed here for the sitting president. Air Force One, which is $1 billion aircraft, a second Air Force One, which is $1 billion aircraft, a secret little small Air Force One, that's Lord knows what that is, so classified, they don't even talk about that one. And we're not talking about, now let's talk about the vehicles that go with the president, okay? When the real president, the sitting president, comes in, there's an advanced team that comes in on military transports. It used to be on 141s. Now it's C-17s. I think they got rid of all the 141s. They bring in, there's the people call the beast. There's the limousine for the president. Well, there's more than one of those. There's multiples of those. Why are there multiples of those? One is, let's say one of the vehicles goes down, has a mechanical failure. Two, what if one of the vehicles gets damaged or destroyed in an attack? They still need to be able to move the president in vehicles that is highly protected against nuclear, biological, and radiological attack in the limousine. And third, I think there's another one. What they do is they have identical vehicles. They never say which one the president's in, just like they do with the helicopters. They never say which one the president's in case someone takes a shot and, the countermeasures don't work and someone gets through, that at least there's a 1 in 3 chance, or 1 in however many vehicles there is, that you don't realize the president's not in that vehicle. And the president even could be hidden inside of what they would consider a Secret Service vehicle. This is getting huge. And you're not talking about the refueling of all this, the communications to operate all this, the logistics, to coordinate all the people involved in all of this that goes on and on and on. Now let's talk about what the president's Secret Service detail, the sitting president's Secret Service detail, what it does. It obviously protects the president. You're like, duh. Yeah, you see the movies. But you got to understand, the Secret Service, as it grew and became a fixture, in post-World War II America, and we started getting into the Cold War, and we started getting into the nuclear arms race, and people really thought, and it may seem weird today, but I grew up in this, that we were going to end up fighting a nuclear war. We were going to end up being at war with Russia. They were going to invade us. Something was going to happen. There would be decapitation strikes. and drink some coffee. And all these scenarios. And one of the things that they were worried about, and the Secret Service is configured to do this for the president, the Secret Service detail that protects the president, which is currently Joe Biden, has a counter-assault force that is large enough to fight off a Russian airborne paratrooper ambush or attack in the opening moments of possibly a nuclear war. Let me say that again. The Secret Service that follows the president rolls so heavy, they are designed that they can fight conventional soldiers and Russian paratroopers, not just defend, counterattack. So the remaining detail can pull the president away. Are you starting to realize how huge this is? This is bonkers huge. The perimeters for the president are unbelievable, the security perimeters. The president, they close highways. They run the dude, roads you can't go down and roads you can't go up. He goes down them and he goes up them. They say the president's coming into a town, and you're like, well, he's going to land at the airport. And all of a sudden he comes in a smaller plane. He lands at a smaller region or airport. And then, he ends up going that way. And you never know what the route he's going to take. Even the locals may not necessarily know the route he's going to take. Even the local police, they decide at the last minute. Sometimes they even do things where he drives and all of a sudden he gets in a helicopter and he flies, and they always are mixing it up. This is a huge operation. Donald Trump, I am sorry to tell you, does not have that level of protection. Barack Obama does not have that level of protection. George W. Bush does not have that level of protection. Bill Clinton does not have that level of protection. Now, that is not a conspiracy theory. Okay? That is just how it is. And typically, if the president's Secret Service detail is the A-team, and it's fair to say that it is, that's the job. You're on the presidential detail. I don't remember what they even technically call it, but it's the job, right? And that's a busy job. There's pre-planning, there's pre-work, there's the actual travel, the actual security. And what ends up happening a lot is you'll have people, they rotate into that job, and maybe they work with some certain presidents for a while, and then maybe it's time to maybe take a break or maybe go to the next level of your career, and they go to a protection detail that has a smaller operational tempo, like for a former president, or maybe the president becomes used to certain members of his detail, and that those members of those detail decide, I'm going to stick with you, former Mr. President, and I'm going to stay with you and finish out my career, with you on working the post-presidential detail. Donald Trump does not have a giant detail. And you can even see, in the videos, if you look at the, people are talking about those women, the Secret Service agents, and some of the arguments that they're making are not unfounded, but I want you to look at what people don't see. They're smaller women. Women are typically smaller than men. And when you see the vehicle that Trump gets into, it's an armored Suburban. It's not the beast Cadillac. Look at the thickness of the doors of that vehicle. And if you ever get a chance, after you get off this podcast, go look at the doors whenever they open the doors to the beast, the presidential limousine. The thickness of the doors, they're two completely different animals. So it wouldn't be a surprise to me, people criticizing these women, and not that they're without due regard in this criticism. Those women probably would have a very difficult time opening and closing the doors on the actual presidential Cadillac limousine thing. They're so heavy. I mean, I think they weigh, I've heard what the number was, but I'm not sure what it is now. But let's get back to Trump for a minute, what we're talking about here. So Trump does not have the level of protection that a sitting president has, because he's not in the chain of command of the Constitution. Some people are looking at videos or images of the shooting, and they don't know what they don't know, particularly about riflecraft, precision rifle work, snipers, counter snipers, stalking exercises, and kind of how some of this stuff works. And like one of the big ones I saw, and I'm not going to mention this person's name who's on Twitter, but it gets sent to me, and I've seen this person before. It's a blue checkmark person, and he's got a still image, or he's taken a clip of the snipers that everybody sees in the shooting of Trump, which are the two snipers to Trump's right on a roof. And he sees them in their scopes, and he says they'd let the attacker shoot before they started shooting. Like, because he assumes, because he doesn't know shit about guns, he definitely doesn't know shit about precision rifle work, that just being in your scope doesn't mean you're aiming at a target. Part of being a sniper is being in the glass, okay? You're scanning all the time. Here's a clue for all the folks that may be so inclined. You'll hear this reference to Chris Kyle. And they're like, how was Chris Kyle so successful? Chris Kyle admitted this. He wasn't successful because he was the best shot. He was successful because he would stay in that glass forever. He had the ability to do it without getting a headache or do whatever. And so let's just talk about those two Secret Service snipers. I don't even know if they're Secret Service snipers. They might even be local snipers. It's not clear to me, but what they probably are, but it is what it is. Most of you has seen these people. You've either seen video or you've seen still images. All right. And what they're doing is they're up there on that roof, and they're trying to scan, either it's going to be a part of an area or a whole area. They've either breaking up, depending on how many sniper positions there are. I've seen diagrams that say there's 2 groups of snipers. I don't know if that's true. I haven't confirmed it. No one said it. I don't know if someone just drew an extra little X on a map and said there's another sniper group on another roof, or whether it's been acknowledged, or if there's more, or if there's less, or even if they're, like I said, even if they're actual Secret Service or they're local snipers, which is very common, by the way. Typically, how the Secret Service works is, at least with the president, is they control the inner perimeter, and then local police and SWAT, they control outside that cordoned off area. So these 2 guys, they're up on that roof, and they're in the glass, and they're looking for stuff. And if you watch the video, the pulled away video, and Trump is talking, but if you look at the snipers, there's one laying kind of prone, and there's one in a tripod with a hog saddle. It looks like a hog saddle to me. Again, because I know precision rifles. It looks like a hog saddle or a hog type saddle. And if you watch that guy, before the first shot is taken by the attacker, you will see him gopher up behind the rifle. And gophering up happens typically 2 ways in precision rifle work. One of them is bad and one of them is necessary. A gopher move is when you stick your head up, and a lot of undisciplined shooters, when they're looking through their glass, they'll take their shot, ride the recoil, then they will stick their head up and try to look over the rifle to look down range. Well, if you're far enough away that you need to use your scoped weapon, you probably should stay in the scope, stay in the glass. So it's a bad habit. And also, people tend to go for early, and then it messes up the natural point of aim and recoil, control of the rifle, okay? The second reason why people gopher, and it's a lot of times why you will see red dots on the exterior, even on sniper rifles and spotting scopes, is a high magnification scope. You can see far, but the more the magnification, the smaller the area you're looking. You're kind of looking through a tube. But if you're trying to identify threats in a tree line, or in a crowd or in a business park or on a horizon, you're playing Where's Waldo. And you're doing it through your spotting scope or your powerful binoculars or your rifle scope. He's in his glass. He gophers up. And then, which is a sign something is up. I've never seen a sniper move like that unless they're trying to transition to something. Because typically, if they're a magnification, small movements have a large effect on your field of view. All of a sudden, this guy, he gophers. And then he picks up his tripod, he throws it to the right. And I think the first shot then happens. So at that point when he gophers, we don't know the facts. So I'm going to tell you I don't know the facts. But this is what I'm going to surmise from an educated guess. At that point, either it came across a radio that everyone's talking about. We saw the shooter. It came across the radio. Building 4 that they've hopefully mapped out, they would call building, whatever they would call the building. Building 1, Building 4, Building A, Building B. I'm not going to get into how snipers do that, but they create this chart of everything they all can reference, so they can, even determine, this fire hydrant is 200 yards away. This whatever is 100 yards away. This tree, this, that. Either he got a radio call or he saw something and he gophers, and then he swings his tripod all the way over, and he's obviously, something's wrong. And this is before the first shot is taken by the attacker. Okay? Then he gets back in the glass, and then they end up engaging. Okay? And I think that guy got 3 shots off pretty quickly. So this idea that this guy was just letting in the glass, looking at the target, and let the guy shoot at Trump, and this is an inside job. Again, I'm not opposed to, I'm not going to say conspiracy theories, but I'm not opposed to theories of the case, but we're going to use evidence and we're going to follow the lead of where this goes. Just slandering these guys, if they're patriots and professionals that saved Donald Trump's life, that may end up being heroes, and you're doing a John Murtha. If you don't know who John Murtha is, he's the Democratic congressman who, when there was the attack on the Marines in Haditha, Iraq, and there was a lieutenant, and the Iraqis tried to say that this was a massacre and that this lieutenant they'd murdered these Iraqis, and it turns out all of it was fake. But Murtha came out without knowing all the facts and slandered this Marine. And when the truth came out, Murtha's name was Mud. When Barack Obama came on national television, and when there was the incident with Henry Louis Gates Jr., the professor at the college in Harvard or Boston, wherever that was, got called to break it into his own house, and Obama came on national television and said, "I don't have all the facts, but the police acted stupidly." He looked like a fucking asshole. All right? And a lot of you guys are in serious danger of slandering these 2 snipers, of looking like fucking assholes. Now, some of you may want to call me a bootlicker, which is not helpful. I'm not saying that we don't investigate them. We have to investigate everything. But if you don't know something, don't make it up. If you have a theory of the case, say it as a theory or a possibility, but don't present it as fact. Now let's talk about the roof, okay? This is sniper craft, and this is precision rifle work, and this is the realities of some of this that a lot of people, it's not clear. Because you can tell there's a lot of people on the internet that don't know shit about shooting and don't know shit about precision rifle work, all right? So there's video of people in the crowd saying, "This guy's got a gun. this guy is, this guy's a problem. We told the police, we told him. You may have told police locally to you, and maybe they can communicate with the Secret Service guys inside of the cordon, or maybe they can't. But you just yelling in the air, he's got a gun, and you're 150 yards away at a rally where Trump is talking. It's not like magically every person around the president heard you say that. You got to have a little grace here. The other thing is, you can tell everybody talks about how can you not see that guy on the roof? Because you can tell there's people that don't understand how precision shooting works and how counter sniper stuff works. And this becomes readily apparent to most of you if you even did this for 10 minutes. It's called defilade. If you look at those buildings and you look at the barn, whatever that metal building that this attacker was on, you will hear people talking. You look at the photographs. They're like, he's low crawling, he's bear crawling on the roof with a gun. Okay? And it's like he's not looking at the direction of the people in the that are like with the cameras going, there's a guy on the roof. He's peeking his head over the pitch of the roof. He's not exposing his entire body. He was low crawling below the roof line, not, quote, skylining himself. In precision rifle work or in armored warfare, we would call this defilade. So going back to the Secret Service snipers on the roof, we don't know if that guy gophered and turned because of a radio call, or we don't know if that guy gophered and turned because all of a sudden now he saw a head and a piece of a rifle come over the peak of that pitched roof on that white building 125 yards away. But something happened before the shooting started that sniper, the Secret Service sniper, he jumped. He saw something, and it was like, oh, shit. But again, everybody's like, it's obvious, like, oh, he was in dark clothing on a white roof. A blind guy could have seen the guy on the roof. Well, I can tell right now you don't know shit about Shinola. And it's kind of stuff's pissing me off. And I think it's unfair. I'm not trying to be unkind, but even the people that are at the event who are the ones with like, I was there, I saw what I saw. There's a lot of disinformation coming out of these people. And I'm not criticizing them. It's just human nature. You're seeing video of a two-dimensional image and they're complaining or they're telling their story. They don't know everything that's going on around them either. And so they're, obviously upset. How come the magic laser beam doesn't come out of the sky and just zap this person on the roof that nobody can see yet? Or the people that the people that need to see it haven't found him yet because they're playing Where's Waldo. All right. And a lot of this stuff leads to the disinformation or the conspiracy theories. Like all of a sudden, everybody now is like, oh, it's 150 yards or 136 yards or 122 yards. That's really interesting. Like it's people. I love how people say this. Like, well, everyone knows this. Well, you know it now. But when this first happened, we had people reaching out to us that were saying it was 500 and 600 yards. There are interviewers at the event that are saying it's 500 and 600 yards. And they're saying that the sniper was shooting through people in the bleachers. That creates an element of disinformation. When I first saw the video, someone sent it to me. Have you seen this? I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I'm looking at here. I'm at the barn. I'm trying to get stuff set up here at the range. And I'm looking at it. The first thing I thought, and if I'd put this out publicly, I would have contributed to disinformation. It's okay to have the thought and be like, well, I think this is what I'm seeing here. I thought Trump was being engaged by somebody within 75 feet of him in the mosh pit in front of the podium with like a 32 caliber weapon with maybe a suppressor on it. And if I had said that publicly, it's like, oh, I think this is what I'm seeing, I would have contributed to disinformation. Somebody would have been like, Marky at John 1911 says it wasn't a rifle, it was a handgun, so this is a conspiracy. There's more than one shooter. I have to learn to shut the fuck up too. But let's talk about some big picture and some ancillary issues that have developed out of this. I'm not defending the Secret Service. I don't know what happened. There will be an investigation. We'll find out. You know, people are pissed off, and because they're pissed off and something happened they didn't want to happen, it's not a conspiracy. Okay? A plane crash isn't a conspiracy. We'll find out. Was it mechanical? Was it human error? Was it malfeasance? Was it criminal? We'll find out. We'll find out with Trump's detail. Were they asking for more help? Was Trump's detail size normal? Does he have the same level of detail that Barack Obama has today? How does Donald Trump's post-presidential detail compare to Secret Service detail he got when he was given the nomination in 2016? These are questions that need to be answered. But if you don't know the answer, it doesn't mean it's a conspiracy or someone's hiding something from you. It's just that maybe you and I are not in a position to know the answer yet. Now, I touched on these women initially, and I don't want to harp on them too much, but people are zooming in on the 2 female Secret Service agents that you're going to go after you listen to this podcast, and you're going to look at the video of them around Donald Trump's armored SUV. That is not nearly as big and heavy and thick and armored as the actual presidential limousine. Okay. And there's some goofiness going on there a little bit. Some of it is not that big of a deal, and some of it is probably preventable. But just a few days ago, I posted a video directly to Facebook, and it's one that I shot here, I don't know, about a week or 10 days ago. And it was, the title of the video, if I remember, basically was, because I get asked this all the time, what's the single skill or drill, quote, I should learn as a home gamer, to be a better shooter? And without a doubt, I'm not saying this is the most important drill or skill that you need to master to be a gun person. What I'm saying is, this is the one skill that I most commonly see, quote, gun guys who shoot, quote, all the time, who, quote, go to training all the time, who maybe, quote, might work for federal agencies, unquote, or police departments, fall apart at. And it's taking the gun out of the holster quickly and presenting it to the target, and quickly putting the gun in the holster. Okay? It's a weakness, because most people, when they start shooting, they start with the gun up. And even in self-defense situations, most of the time, if you're being honest, if you are carrying a gun for self-defense, you're probably going to have an inclination that trouble's coming. And maybe you'll have your gun in your hand. You'll be like, what the fuck's going on out here? And you put the gun in your hand. And so a lot of people train that way. They don't really work on holster work. But the nice thing about holster work is it can go right in with dry fire work. So what did we see with these 2 ladies? They had holster problems. Some of it is going to be because American shooters tend to start their training from the gun up, not from working it in the holster or out of the holster. And I'm sure that's an issue. And also, they're probably newer agents, because this is the B team. This isn't even the B team for the Secret Service. The president is the A team. The vice president is the B team. The first lady's the C team, and the second lady is the D team. So after that, you're dealing with former presidents. So these women may not be as good as they could be, may not be as experienced as they could be, or they may be working at the ability that they could work at. But it needs to be also noted, I'm pretty I'm pretty shitty about holsters. That's why I don't like to bring up holsters on the Facebook page or on social media, because there's so many people that make holsters and they all think their shit doesn't stink. And most holsters that I buy, or if I see them, they're terrible. And I don't want to shit on people, but I mean, I've spent money on $250 on a leather holster that just this past year that had major problems with it, and you've never seen it. And might even be a well-known holster. But these women, at least the one in particular, you'll notice something. She's wearing her belt line because she's a woman, and she's wearing, the pantsuit type deal. She's not wearing, her belt line isn't down around her hips. It's fairly high. That in combination with her body shape and size, and then she's got what I would call a high-rise holster, which I prefer because most holsters sit too deep and you can't snatch the gun out of the holster unless you squirm around in it. So she's got a high belt line with a high-rise holster. She's a squat woman who doesn't quite have the shape to be able to look and see down into her holster. So she's wearing a holster with clothing in a configuration that isn't ideal for her body shape, size, and experience. And unfortunately for her, 7 billion people have seen her fiddle fuck with that holster and that gun. That sucks. It sucks for her, but it is what it is. Now, this opens the door into what a lot of you guys are pissed off about. And you're projecting onto people your anger at the wrong place and possibly slandering heroes, okay? You're pissed off at how dysfunctional the Secret Service is. Secret Service has had dysfunction for years. They've had agents rolling with hookers in foreign countries. I think that was Colombia. They've had, just all kinds of, fucking problems. And now their director has come out and she's talking about, I guess they call it DEI, and 30% of their hires or whatever, a third of their new hires are going to be, I think she said, primarily female. And it's like, okay, it's like, all right, like, forget the girls with the holster and messing with their glasses. It's a chaotic situation. And this isn't politically correct to say, but it's worth saying. Regarding law enforcement, I like cops that can fight. And I mean that exactly. I was like, what does that mean? I know exactly what I just said, and I meant every word of it, okay? The reality is size matters. Size is an advantage. Hey, Bruce Lee's out there. I get it. Mighty Mouse at MMA. Dude, I get it. I love that shit. But if you're trading punches with somebody, you can trade punches with them. You're less likely to have to shoot them. So ultimately, it's safer if you can fight. Also, if you can fight, you can also lift shit and carry shit. Those two women, unfortunately, I have to make examples of them. And I don't know their records at all. And I'm not trying to single them out. But for the benefit of the listener of this podcast, they are the examples that you have in mind. Do you think if those two women, if one of those women had been shot and incapacitated, that the other woman would have been able to lift up the other woman and carry her to safety? One of those women, I'm pretty sure, could not do that. Now, we're not even talking about the protectee. Donald Trump, I'm 6'1". They say Donald Trump is 6'2". I'm 245. I don't know what he weighs, but I don't know. 265, 275, it's going to be a problem, especially if it all goes bad. What if it was a Russian attack, paratrooper attack, and 40% of that detail that's around that president is dead, and now it's up to you to try to, get his ass out of there? That's where this becomes troublesome. So maybe we don't need 30% of a certain physical look. Maybe we need a focus on abilities, regardless if you're purple, green, or you have a cock or wear a dress. No one cares. Can you do the job? There's a reason why firefighters tend to be big dudes. There's a reason why cops tend to be bigger dudes. And if they're not bigger dudes, they better make it up in some other ways. Now, I'm not saying women can't be cops, and I'm not saying women can't be Secret Service agents. I'm not saying that. I never said that. You have to have women that are Secret Service agents. You absolutely have to. Here's why. Okay, if you just spent the last 2 years bitching and moaning about dudes wearing one-piece swim trunks and swimming against girls, going in the women's locker room and undressing around, a dude undressing around women, then you sure as fuck probably want some female Secret Service agents around for the wives and girlfriends and the first ladies and dignitaries and daughters of whomever you're protecting. You need them. Also, there's some benefits to women in law enforcement as far as a de-escalation tactic. We all know this. There's been cases where a guy like me is trying to talk to somebody and he takes it personally and he's like, fuck you, I'm going to kick your ass, Marky. And he decides he's going to throw down because it's ego and maybe a woman can talk his ass off the ledge and nobody has to get beat, tased, or shot. The question is, those two women that you saw there that day, are they hurting President Trump or are they helping President Trump? I don't have the answer to that. I don't think you do either. I think it's fair to say that the director of the Secret Service is in trouble. She'd be lucky if she makes it to the end of Biden's term, but she certainly isn't going to be there if in a second term, even if the second term ends up being a President Kamala Harris. I hope. I mean, even Kamala wants to put someone else in. I just feel like, politically, it might be time to go. Now, just sort of a couple other things that I want to say here. Incidental and just some, food for thought and some data points that some people don't realize. So everyone likes to let's talk about presidential assassination attempts or attacks. Okay. And everyone's saying this is the first time this has happened since Ronald Reagan in 1981 when he got shot outside of the, was he shot outside the Watergate? I think he might've been the Watergate. George Bush was actually a victim of a very serious, attempt on his life, but it got kind of played down because the Secret Service didn't want to talk about it too much. And they certainly learned from it. But what it was in 2005, if I recall, George Bush was in, I believe it was the former Soviet country of Georgia. Okay? And he was visiting with their president or prime minister or King Poobah, whatever it was. And I think he was in a public, like a parade or something public where there were all these people. Because again, the president of that country, politically, he's like, George Bush is coming to town. He's coming to visit me. And he wants that juice to show his people, hey, vote for me or support me. The leader of the free world's coming to visit me. So that it's not just, go have a handshake and a beer in private. And somebody in that crowd, they arrested the guy, threw a hand grenade at Bush and the president of Georgia, the country of Georgia, and they were behind some kind of bulletproof glass, and they try to say that it probably wouldn't have worked, but I think that's the official story. The only thing that really saved them was the grenade didn't go off. Now, there is some debate as to whether the grenade was defective or maybe some other situation that, they're not going to say what the real reason is. But the fact is, in 2005, Bush almost got whacked and nobody talks about it. And the Secret Service likes that. The Secret Service, they maintain a reference collection of all the attempts on heads of state or high-profile people. And, they try to keep stuff quiet because they don't want to inspire copycats or people to get smarter or to learn from their mistakes. I think it reasonably can be said that there was a legit attempt on Bill Clinton's life when somebody flew an airplane into the White House one night. Do you remember that? That wasn't just a protest. It was a big deal. And, the president was fine. He was never in danger, yada, yada, yada. This is pre 9/11, but he flew a Cessna airplane. He might have been pissed off about taxes, or maybe broke up his wife, and pissed off about taxes. But he flew this little fucking airplane in, and it was like, boom, it went right into the White House. And it didn't, I don't think it penetrated the building. But again, all that stuff, however close or not close Clinton came or the first family came to being injured, the Secret Service is never going to tell that story. And they made changes. And along those lines, consider this. If you think Donald Trump, if you're shocked to learn, listen to this podcast, that Donald Trump does not have anywhere near the level of Secret Service protection that the current president has, put this one in your pipe and smoke it, because it's gonna make you pucker. All right. And nobody's saying this. The Secret Service, I guarantee you, is super worried about this. They've been worried about this for a long time, but they're really worried about it over the past couple of years. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at all these drone attacks that they're conducting against individual soldiers in Ukraine with these explosives big enough to kill tanks. And they're chasing down individual vehicles and individual soldiers. And some of those drones move very fast. And you'll also notice, in most cases, there's dudes with AK-47s or AK-74s shooting at those drones and not hitting them. Because that shit is hard. You're seeing shotguns come back, long guns, bird guns come back into vogue with buckshot in them. Secret Service is probably very, very, very worried about a drone zipping in at 70 miles an hour and going right at somebody, and what they're going to try to do about that. And that technology is here right now. That technology is so prevalent in Ukraine that I don't think it would be difficult to research that and clone that in the United States. Makes me wonder, I've wondered if there's going to come a time in the not too distant future that you're going to see drones probably above 1 pound in weight, or maybe a pound and a half. They're going to be straight up banned. The government may look at that as something like a machine gun. It's going to be so bad. Some of these drones, you could kill anybody. And it's so cheap and so prevalent, you could have stalkers or crazy people going after celebrities in Hollywood. And that's not, flying car fantasy in the future shit. That is 2 years ago. Okay, we're over an hour, and I'm going to wrap this up with a lesson. And, first reports are almost always wrong. The other lesson is the law of unintended consequences. All right. So let me set this up for you. How this could easily have happened in somebody's mind, probably the shooter's mind, the person who attacked Trump, and how this person rationalized this, and how all these people, you see these libs, how they're going around and they're just, they're mad because he missed. I can't believe it. We were so close. We were sending all this crazy, vile shit that they would say about possibly hurting Donald Trump. I would take a bullet to defend Barack Obama, but these fucking fools, they're, at best you can get, if something were to have happened to Donald Trump, at best you can get out of them is it could have happened to a nicer guy. It's just crazy, these people. All right? But think about this. The law of unintended consequences. Imagine one of these little commies, and they're talking to a genie. And the genie says, I will grant you one wish, Commie. What is going to be the wish? And the Commie goes, I want President Donald Trump dead. And the genie goes, well, you have to be specific. And the Commie goes, what do you mean? The genie goes, I can't kill him. You have to give me what you want to do to the president. And the Commie goes, well, I'd like to shoot him. It's like, okay. And the Commie says, wait a minute. Whoa. Maybe I want to be specific. And the Commie goes, no. I just don't want to shoot him. I want the wish to say, I'm shoot him in the head. Because even if he dies, or even if he doesn't die, he could be incapacitated. He's just trying to solve the problem. And he's like, this will solve all my problems. And the genie goes, all right. So I will grant your wish, and you will be able to shoot Donald Trump in the head. He got his wish. And look what's happened today. Donald Trump was shot in the head. It is going to go down as one of the most iconic images in American history. It is now most likely that Donald Trump is going to go down as one of the greatest presidents in the history of this country. It has also now become very clear to people like me, and the Commie's not going to want to hear this, and this is my personal opinion, and I've had this for a while, but the Commie and the genie, has really given me an opportunity to say it to you, and many of you may not like this, which is fine. It has become clear to me a long time ago, there's something special about Donald Trump. You could say it's divine providence. You could say it's luck. You could say it's the grace of God. But I noticed a long time ago, and I started saying it in private, even when, I was like, man, Donald Trump's not going to get out of this one. I don't know. Like, we're kind of like, oh, now, man, Donald Trump. And every time Donald Trump, he comes back stronger than ever. It is not a big leap for folks like me to sit here and say that Donald Trump obviously has the grace of God behind him. And millions of people, or maybe hundreds of millions of people around the world today think the same thing because of a commie and a crazy wish. They shot Donald Trump in the head. They made him bigger than they could have possibly imagined.